Black Lives Matter equals defund the police. All done with the effective blessing of the mayor. And the district government, in their brief, admits that they didn't have permission to do this. And yet they let it stay there. And to any reasonable viewer, it looks like that's what the District of Columbia is pushing. Along the lines of the abuse of power by the mayor of the District of Columbia, Judicial Watch filed an important document in its lawsuit over that Black Lives Matter, Defund the Police slogan that was painted on the DC streets just outside the White House. The DC mayor obviously was involved in that, endorsed it. And the problem is when you allow a public forum like the streets to be used in this regard, you just can't tell other people they can't also paint a message. And that's what they're doing effectively to Judicial Watch. We've asked and have been effectively denied permission because they refused to give us permission to paint our slogan, our motto, our motivation, which is because no one is above the law on the streets of DC. And they've refused to allow us to do it. And not only that, but other folks have tried to ask and tried to, and they've been denied. I think there was a veterans group that had asked. They were given the runaround. There was also a pro-life group who evidently thought they did get permission to paint on the street. I think Unborn Lives Matter or something like that. And what they did was the police at the scene told them, well, you can't do that. So what they did was they started writing a message on chalk in the street, on the sidewalk, and they were arrested for defacement of public property. They were arrested. And of course, Judicial Watch has its own message, and we're getting the runaround as well. So the DC government came in and they filed their brief, and I'm not going to give it too much in time because, it's just a legal argument, and, they're just saying what they can to try to get away with this abuse of power. But they're trying to get our civil rights lawsuit dismissed. Again, this is a civil rights issue. When you have a government entity bless certain speech, but deny improperly the free speech rights of others in similar circumstances, that's a First Amendment. That's a civil rights issue. Our civil rights are being violated. That's the heart of the lawsuit. As we say, they acted arbitrarily and committed viewpoint discrimination, basic First Amendment violations, in failing to grant us permission as we asked. And we were I would say we were too nice. I say we were too nice, like I had nothing to do with it. But we bent over backwards, say, what do we do? What do we do? Let's call this person. Let's call that person. And we were just getting the runaround for weeks and weeks before we sued. Believe it or not, if we can avoid it, we will not sue on big issues like this. The hope is just to get them to do the right thing short of a lawsuit. But that wasn't what the mayor wanted to do, evidently. On June 5th, after days of protests and riots in D.C., residents, a team of artists, district employees, and demonstrators painted Black Lives Matter and the district's crest on the street. The district's crest. It's 3 bars with, I think it's 2 or 3 bars with with stars above it. And it's an equal sign essentially with 3 bars above it. And so what happened next is painted next to it, and they initially blotted out the stars to make it really apparent. They painted Defund the Police. So it said Black Lives Matter equals Defund the Police. All done with the effective blessing of the mayor. It's pretty clear. And the district government, in their brief, admits that they didn't have permission to do this. And yet they let it stay there, and to any reasonable viewer, it looks like that's what the District of Columbia is pushing. And we asked a few days later, and they ignored our request. And I could go back in the back and forth of the administrative back and forth we went, but we did everything we thought we could do to try to get a straight answer, and we couldn't get one. So we get treated very differently from the Black Lives Matter groups that painted Black Lives Matter and Defund the Police on the street outside the White House. And you know what was really interesting? During the Democratic National Convention, the mayor gave on behalf of the district Democratic Party, pledged the delegates to Joe Biden in front of the Black Lives Matter sign. But they had just before then, oddly, scraped over Defund the Police. And I hear just now that it's back. So they obviously, it looks like they didn't want it to be seen on national television during the convention. And it just shows you the kind of gamesmanship we're facing with the District of Columbia government. The First Amendment forbids arbitrary treatment of requests to engage in expressive conduct and viewpoint discrimination. It's a straightforward case. And the district has thrown up all this chaff to pretend that they're not doing what in fact they are doing. And Judicial Watch, I've read the brief. I encourage you to read our full brief. It really covers quite nicely what the issues are. It's accessible to the layman. I'm not a lawyer. And what I love about Judicial Watch's work is you don't need to be a lawyer to understand why we're doing what we're doing and even the legal arguments behind it. You know, in the end, Judicial Watch, not in the end, we are an educational foundation. So our litigation is obviously designed to get the government to do the right thing, but it's also designed to educate the American people about an issue of either government malfeasance or government operations generally, so that the people know what their government's up to. And so the litigation is educational. So we write our briefs, we write our lawsuits in a way, I mean, sometimes they have to be legally technical in the sense of being difficult to get through. But for the most part, we try to make sure that everyone can understand our argument, which is probably good legal sense too, because courts are human beings too. They want to be able to understand what you're writing about. So I encourage you to find out more about this lawsuit, support it if you'd like. But, Mayor Bowser gave us the runaround rather than equal access to, again, the message is because no one is above the law. Not that we have to defend the message. What would you want to write on the street? I don't know. Blue Lives Matter. I know many people support that. We had the pro-life group, Unborn Lives Matter. I mean, one of my own personal favorites is Your Life Matters. That to me is like the American phrase. Your life matters. You're an individual. You are important, irrespective of your race, irrespective of all these other divisions the left wants to highlight to separate us. Your life matters. Not because you're a member of a group or a class or a religious organization or a religious group or race, or all the variations, gender, sex, all the variations the left wants to focus on to divide Americans. It's your life matters. So those are the sorts of things that should be allowed to be painted on the streets if the government's going to be doing this. And they don't want to be held accountable for their misconduct here. And so we've got these First Amendment rights, and they shouldn't take a back seat to the mayor's political agenda in promoting Black Lives Matter and defund the police. So we'll be pushing it. I know it's happening in other states and cities. We're looking at potential litigation in New York where there's similar gamesmanship going on, where some messages are being treated more equally than others. It's the old Orwellian approach. Some are more equal than others, meaning if you have a dissenting voice or even an alternative voice from the government, they don't want you saying it. It's a troubling time. It's a troubling time. So this is more than about painting a message on the street. This is about the government suppressing speech. If they can suppress speech in this context, where else will they be able to suppress speech? So important information, or an important lawsuit. You know, and it shows you that it's not just complaining. We have to litigate. So when we file a lawsuit, it's just not like, oh, let's file a lawsuit, see what happens. No, we got to, A, make sure it's compliant with the law,